Good afternoon. As US-Iran talks continue, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio will complete his Gulf tour today after meeting with regional allies in the UAE, Kuwait and Bahrain. His stop in Kuwait yesterday marked the official reopening of its US embassy, following its closure due to security concerns over the recent Iran conflict. Before departing for Bahrain, Secretary Rubio spoke to reporters about the importance of engaging with US allies in the Middle East regarding the US-Iran peace negotiations.
Look, we're going to be completely aligned with our partners in the Gulf. That's why we're meeting with all of them tomorrow. That's why I've taken these trips now. And it's the reason why I'm here. Apart from thanking them for the incredible support they gave us throughout this process, we want them to know, and we want to reiterate and begin to talk to them and engage them on conversations about every decision that's made with regards to this negotiation. We're not going to do anything that undermines the security of our allies, our long-standing allies in the region. So I think that's something that our partners believe when we say, because we're doing it, and we're going to continue to do it, and we're doing it with them now.
The Secretary also addressed concerns over the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and the financial gains Iran will receive from the sale of its oil.
The U.S. waived oil sanctions against Iran on Monday. Are you concerned
for 60 days?
Are you concerned that Iran is going to use the extra income from that to fund proxy groups or improve its military capacity?
Look, obviously, anytime you enter into a negotiation, it's a process of give and take. This is a temporary measure. It's for 60 days. And as a result, we expect them to live up to the commitments they made in Switzerland. If they don't live up to those commitments, the president has a lot of options at his disposal, including, I'm not saying he's going to do it, I'm saying including reversing these sanctions. They made very straight up commitments in Switzerland, and the president has been very clear they need to keep those commitments. If they do, we'll keep forward. If not, the president will have options at his disposal for what to do about it. Let's hope they keep those commitments.
Questions turn to Israel's military presence in southern Lebanon. Secretary Rubio reiterated that the only reason why Israel maintains a military presence in the country is due to the threat posed by Hezbollah, which launches rockets and drones from Lebanese territory. Meanwhile, a fifth round of US-mediated talks between representatives from Israel and Lebanon continue in Washington today, where the parties are discussing a potential Israeli withdrawal from parts of the region, allowing the Lebanese armed forces to take military control of these pilot zones. Additionally, conversations include efforts to curb Hezbollah's influence in Lebanon and enforce its disarmament in border areas.
Israel-Lebanon talks, Israel signaled that, it's reluctant to withdraw its forces back 10 kilometers from the buffer zone. Is that something that you would support as these talks go on in Washington, Israel withdrawing from some zones in southern Lebanon?
Well, the only reason Israel is in Lebanon is because Hezbollah launches rockets and drones from there. They've made that clear, and the talks continue today. They started yesterday, they'll go on today, they'll go on tomorrow, and that's exactly what they're talking to the Lebanese about with our mediation. And that is our hope that the Lebanese armed forces and the legitimate sovereign Lebanese government will continue to be able to control and secure more and more of their own territory, because that's who needs to control Lebanese territory, not a terrorist group like Hezbollah. So that's the goal. And I think the Israelis have been clear. They don't have any quarrels with the Lebanese people. They don't have any claims on the territory of Lebanon. The reason why they're involved there is because territory of Lebanon is being used to launch drones and missiles against Israel. But the more of that area the Lebanese armed forces is able to secure, the less of it's in Hezbollah's control, the less Israel will be in Lebanon. But obviously that's the process we're working through right now with these talks. That's at the core of these talks.
Is it your assessment that the Lebanese armed forces today, as it stands, are capable enough, trustworthy enough to actually...
Well, that's what we have to do. Look, we have to build up that capacity. That's been a long-standing challenge. I think the willingness is there. I think we need to help build up that capacity. And one of the issues that's been discussed in these negotiations is about the creation of pilot zones, specific defined areas where the Lebanese armed forces can go in, take control and secure that territory, and then move on to the next pilot zone. So it'll be a process. This is not going to happen overnight. I remind everybody that Israel was conducting operations in southern Lebanon well before this operation happened. And this is something we all want to see resolved for the future of Lebanon. We want to see a Lebanon that's in the control of their legitimate government, where there is no foreign government in encroaching on their territory. And I want to reiterate that the Israelis have told us, and that is the only reason why they're there is because Hezbollah is launching against their people. If Hezbollah wasn't launching against them, they wouldn't be there.
As US-Iran talks continue in the active phase of negotiations, the US Secretary of State noted that technical discussions with Iran are expected to hold again at the end of the month in Bergenstock, Switzerland.
Pakistan just announced next phase of Iran talks for next week.
I think the technical group will be back, I believe, on the 29th or the 30th. They've broken up into work groups on various subjects. I believe they're going back to Switzerland, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, the technical group will reconvene again on, I believe it's the 30th. Don't exactly quote me, but they've broken up the negotiation into separate work streams on separate topics, and the technical group will return on the 30th next week to continue those talks.
With oil now flowing freely through the strait, US President Trump has called out big oil companies over potential price gouging, stating that despite oil prices dropping sharply, prices at the pump remain exorbitantly high. As a result, the president has ordered the Department of Justice to look into the matter.
Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier today, you instructed your Department of Justice to do an investigation for oil companies that you said gas prices were not coming down quick enough, and you are concerned that there is price gouging going on, taking advantage of the crisis. Sir, can you elaborate on that?
So it's ExxonMobil, it's Chevron, it's Shell, it's BP, it's a lot of them. The gasoline or the oil prices have come down so much, and we are not seeing anything at the pump by comparison to what it should be. We should be, in my opinion, at $2.25 right now at the pump. And we're higher than that. And we are doing a big investigation on it, yeah. They're not reducing the prices commensurate with what's happening. Look, we are sending out, think of it, 19 million barrels came out yesterday. That is a flood. That's like a gusher. That's an oil gusher. And they should be much lower, the gasoline prices, which really is what people see more than anything else, but for their car. But the gasoline prices should be much lower at the pump. And the oil companies are possibly gouging. I hope they're not, otherwise they're going to be in big trouble. They're going to be in big trouble. We're not going to play games.
Follow our Love World networks for the latest breaking news. During his meeting with President Trump in the Oval Office on Wednesday, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte highlighted the increase in European and Canadian defense spending under President Trump's 2 terms in office. However, President Trump aptly pointed out that majority of NATO member states have yet to reach the 5% of GDP defense spending target. Rutte's emphasis on recent spending gains appeared aimed at downplaying NATO's broader shortcomings, including its limited support for the United States during the Iran conflict.
Because I want to show you what this president was able to achieve. And I start with this chart. This chart is about the Trump trillion. The Trump trillion shows you the increase Europeans and Canadians are paying into defense since you took office in 2017. Right. Trump 45 plus Trump 47. A total of extra spent by the Europeans and the Canadians of 1.2 trillion. When you look at the effect of Trump 47, so the isolated effect of the extra defense spending in 2025 and in 2026, you see almost $140 billion extra spent nominal on defense by the Europeans and the Canadians, and also this year you will again see an increase by about 120 billion, which brings a total in 2 years of over $250 billion. I can assure you this is because of Russia, because of the threat, but I'm also absolutely convinced that you being President of the United States, being consistently pushing for something which since Eisenhower has not been achieved, which is the Europeans equalizing their defense spending with the United States. This is your evidence.
Rutte's Washington visit coincided with the E5 summit, which held yesterday in Berlin. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz hosted French President Emmanuel Macron, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk, and outgoing UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer to coordinate stronger European support for Ukraine, boost NATO's European pillar, and promote European self-reliance ahead of the July NATO summit in Ankara.
Last week, the G7, and thank you again, Emmanuel, for hosting a successful G7, where we pledged our unwavering support to Ukraine. And we've been able to echo that here today, our determination to capitalise on Ukraine's newfound momentum. They are increasingly able to push Russia back on the battlefield. That's been the story very much of this year. And there are clear signs that as Russia loses mount and their economy struggles, the mood in Moscow is turning against Putin's war. So this is a really important moment to ramp up the pressure on their economy with more sanctions and providing Ukraine with more military support. We are committed to driving this forward, and that this should be the first item on the agenda at the NATO summit in a couple of weeks' time. The second key issue at the summit must be building a more European NATO. We've been making this argument for some time, but now is the time at this summit to really push this argument forward. Our aim together should be to lead a decisive strengthening of European leadership and sovereign capabilities, working, of course, in full coordination with the United States. Because we know that is what it will take to keep our countries safe, deter those who would do us harm, and preserve the most successful military alliance in history. That is the big strategic challenge of the moment, in the face of a clear and growing threats that we face. And we are all playing our full part. The UK is ready to implement the largest sustained increase in defence funding since the Cold War. We've already taken steps last year to that end, and we'll take further steps. And we're going further, working to deliver our defence investment plan ahead of the NATO summit, not just to increase how much we spend on defence, but to completely overhaul how we spend it, to learn the lessons of Ukraine, and to ensure that we're ready to meet the threats of today and of tomorrow.
With a NATO summit less than 2 weeks away, President Trump hinted at a major arms deal for Turkey, potentially including F-110 jet engines and F-35 fighter jets. The US head of state commended Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's cooperation with the United States and its strong role within NATO, saying that he will probably do something that's going to make Erdogan very happy.
And I like him. He's a friend of mine, and he stayed out of the war. You know, he was a prime candidate to go into the war with Iran, maybe on the Iran side, because he's not a big fan of Israel, as you know. And I asked him to stay out. He stayed out. And you know who else was great? Was President Xi of China. He could have come in. He gets half of his oil from that area. You know, I could see him wanting to, and I asked him to please stay out, and he did. We did a good job. But he stayed out. Erdogan's a great leader, very strong person, great military. And I asked him to stay out, and he did. And so did President Xi. And frankly, so did Putin, if you really look. But you could say that Vladimir has some other things to focus on. But they all stayed out. I mean, it was pretty amazing. People were surprised. And I think that Erdogan is, look, he loves Turkey, right? He's doing a great job. He loves Turkey. I love the U.S., but he loves Turkey, and he's doing a great job. He's a respected man, a respected leader, and he's been a friend of mine. Now, I shouldn't say that, because guys like Peter would say, oh, he likes Erdogan. He likes Erdogan. No, Peter won't. Peter doesn't. Some of the others, let's say. But Erdogan is a strong man, but he's been everything I've ever asked him for, he's done.
Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General clearly pointed out that allies want to do defense business with you. and Turkey is definitely one of them. They want the F-110 jet engines, and they want the F-35 fighter jets. Are you going to Turkey with a big gift bag for Erdogan?
Yeah, I think so. Look, he's a member of NATO. Some people don't consider him so, but he really is. He's a strong member of NATO. Yeah, I'm going to probably do something that's going to make him very happy.
And Turkey has
Tell him
a
hello,
huge...
right? Tell him hello. He's a good man.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer's resignation also came up in the Oval Office. When asked about Starmer's likely successor, Andy Burnham, President Trump didn't express much hope, noting that Burnham is extremely liberal. The president revealed that he had previously warned Starmer that the UK's mass immigration problem and energy crisis would cost him his prime ministership, adding that Burnham doesn't seem any more likely to address these issues.
Thank you, Beth Turner from GB News. You mentioned that our Prime Minister has got one foot out the door. The new guy's coming in, Andy Burnham. What do you know about him, Mr. President, and what does he need to do to improve the relationship between our two countries? The new incoming Prime Minister, Andy Burnham.
I don't know anything. I see that he was, I guess, the mayor of a town. I hear he's extremely liberal. Extremely. So that means he probably won't open up the North Sea. You know, I gave Keir Starmer some pretty good advice. I said, open up the North Sea. Go to Aberdeen, which was the hottest city in the whole continent. It was the oil city. It was the oil of Europe. And they closed everything. It was terrible. I saw it before my eyes, and I couldn't believe it. The North Sea is loaded. I have had every oil company come to see me. Sir, could you give us access to the UK? We would do anything to drill in the North Sea. And they haven't even found what's there. The amazing thing is they buy their oil from Norway, which gets the oil from the North Sea. Think of it. And they pay a big premium. Norway's got now $2 trillion in the bank, and UK is dying. So they should open up the North Sea. It's an easy one. And a lot of good things are going to happen. It's among the greatest fields in the world.
The Prime Minister will be installed in a matter of weeks, could be 3 or 4 weeks. Would you want to be the first person on his list to visit globally?
No, but I think we're probably of a different persuasion. He's very liberal. But, you know, I got along well with Starmer. I disagreed with Starmer. I said, you have two problems, immigration and energy. And crime, too, by the way. Crime. You have a terrible mayor of London, by the way. I don't want to cause any problems, but your mayor of London is grossly incompetent, a bad person, and a horrible representative for your country. You know that. That's why you're smiling and laughing, and it's true. But you know that. The mayor of London is a horror show. But you have a crime problem. You have an immigration problem. The immigration helps cause the crime, by the way. And you have a tremendous energy problem. You're building stupid windmills all over the country, and they don't do the job. You have the greatest oil field in the world, one of them. It's called the North Sea oil. All you have to do is bid it out to Exxon, Chevron, Shell, British Petroleum. They are begging to go there and pay billions of dollars. And because the left is so crazy, they don't want the money. And the country is losing. I mean, your country is going to go bankrupt. Think of it. You have one of these. Now, most countries don't have that. You have the North Sea oil, and you have the best part of it. Think of it. You go to Norway, who doesn't have the best part of it, and you give them, and they have $2 trillion in the bank. You know, they have $2 trillion, maybe more, because the UK pays them all this money and others. But you have one of the greatest fields, and I told this guy 15 times, and he wouldn't do it. I said, you're going to lose your prime ministership. And he did. In fact, I called it about 3 days early, right? Remember I said he was leaving? I wonder if that nudged him out.
With US midterm elections scheduled for November 3rd, America is facing a liberal challenge of their own. After 3 progressive candidates endorsed by socialist New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani won their Democratic primaries in New York congressional races this week, US House Speaker Mike Johnson warned Americans that the upcoming midterms will determine the direction of the country. He went further to state that they are currently in a fight to save the republic.
This upcoming midterm election is not the midterm elections of years ago. This is going to decide the direction of the country. Are we going to maintain our status as a constitutional republic on our 250th anniversary? Or are we going to make a new choice and go down some road towards a communist utopia? That's the choice right now. We've been saying for months it's a contrast election. We've been saying it's a contrast between common sense and crazy. That's exactly what's going on. They give us new illustrations every day. And these radical candidates are self-describing, they're self-identifying as Marxist. They want to fundamentally transform this country. And sadly, many of these Democrat candidates and their voters just don't have the same zeal and affection for America. They don't appreciate the freedom that we have in this country. They're not even going to celebrate on July 4th. There's a new Gallup NBC poll that came out. Did you see that? Only 29% of Democrat voters that they polled said they're proud to be an American. What happened to the Democrat Party? They compared the poll from just 20 years ago, where it was 90%, because that's where Republicans are, above 90%. 29%. Over half of Democrats now say they would rather live in another country. What a split screen we're seeing. Right now, we're triumphantly hosting the World Cup games all around the country. And we're seeing people from different countries come and get a little taste of America, a little taste of freedom, of our culture and our society, and they appreciate it so much more than these socialists running for Congress. Don't forget your blessings. People from Europe and Latin America, many countries around the world, many of whom, here's the key, they grew up under repressive state-controlled economies. They've never known freedom. They've never known these kinds of things. And they're seeing them for themselves, the genius of America's system. A system that rewards risk takers and entrepreneurs and job creators and innovators and people who create jobs for others and expand the economy and opportunity and broaden the pathway out of poverty for more people. That's what the Republicans stand for. That's what French Hill fought for in the housing bill, to give more people a chance, to restore the American dream. That's what we promised to the voters, and that's what we are delivering.
And to cement his point, National Park Services were forced to put up fencing around the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool in Washington, D.C. earlier than scheduled before the July 4th events, due to ongoing attempts by the radical left to vandalize the national monument. President Trump told reporters that the repairs to the pool's liner will potentially only take place after America celebrates its 250th birthday, and warned that those convicted of said vandalism could face a 10-year prison sentence for destroying federal property. Let's take a recap of today's headlines. President Trump instructs Department of Justice to investigate potential oil price gouging after fuel prices remain high despite a sharp drop in oil prices.
The gasoline prices should be much lower at the pump, and the oil companies are possibly gouging. I hope they're not, otherwise they're going to be in big trouble. They're going to be in big trouble. We're not going to play games.
E5 leaders meet in Berlin to discuss support for Ukraine and European self-reliance ahead of the NATO summit in Ankara.
The UK is ready to implement the largest sustained increase in defence funding since the Cold War. We've already taken steps last year to that end, and we'll take further steps. President
Trump hints at a major arms deal for Turkey, commending Ankara's cooperation with the US.
You know, he was a prime candidate to go into the war with Iran, maybe on the Iran side, because he's not a big fan of Israel, as you know. And I asked him to stay out, he stayed out. And you know who else was great? Was President Xi of China.
US House Speaker Mike Johnson warns that the upcoming midterm elections will determine the future of America.
This upcoming midterm election is not the midterm elections of years ago. This is going to decide the direction of the country. Are we going to maintain our status as a constitutional republic on our 250th anniversary? Or are we going to make a new choice and go down some road towards a communist utopia?
Thank you for joining us right here on LN24 International. I'm Marika Schroeder, and until next time, goodbye.